Do you think you could give me a lift home? That simple question almost led me to a significant turn of events. It wasn't a stranger on the side of the road or a random person at a gas station. It was someone loosely connected to my circle of friends, and it took me by surprise. My best friend always warned me that my kindness might be my downfall. I'd forgiven cheating ex-partners, let go of toxic friendships, and reconciled with betraying family members. I provided transportation, stayed up late chatting with people in need, and even ordered food for those going through tough times. Growing up, I'd been blessed, and one day I decided to pay it forward whenever possible. This incident happened about 4 or 5 years ago on a quiet 13th Friday night. I opted for a cozy night in with Netflix and snacks instead of going out for drinks and karaoke. I was living with my parents at the time, and my mother was visiting my grandmother. It was just my father, our pets, and me at home. I was curled up in bed, watching a movie, while my dad was on the couch with classic Batman films. About 20 minutes into the movie, I heard a message notification on my phone. I checked the message. It was from someone named Alex, an acquaintance I'd never met, but we had many mutual friends with on social media. He messaged me out of the blue at 10 p.m. "Hello," seemed like a harmless enough start. "Hi, how's it going?" I replied, placing my phone down and resuming the movie. He responded quickly, saying, "Good. Hey, listen, I'm at my friend's place and everyone is intoxicated. Do you think you could give me a ride home?"
It was an unexpected request, considering I barely knew the person. But it was late, cold outside, and public transportation had stopped running. Ride shares weren't available in my town at the time, and hailing a taxi was expensive.
"Where are you?" I quickly checked my navigation app and saw he wasn't far from me, just a couple of miles north. I figured it wouldn't take long, and at least he wouldn't have to walk in the cold or get a ride from someone who had been drinking. "Give me a few minutes to get ready and I'll let you know when I'm on my way." "Great, thanks." A strange feeling settled in my stomach, but it was just my anxiety acting up in a new social situation. I got dressed, collected my essentials, and informed my father before heading out. As I pulled up to Alex's friend's house, I noticed the only light came from a window on the 3rd floor. I could hear the sound of people having a good time. I messaged Alex, and he appeared at the window, looking down at me. The sight sent shivers down my spine, but my tinted windows concealed my reaction. Alex messaged that he was coming down, but the person on the 3rd floor hadn't moved. Eventually, Alex emerged from the front door, looking exactly as he did in their social media photos. He hopped into my car, thanking me and offering an enthusiastic hug. I started driving, and the person on the 3rd floor window continued to watch. A sense of unease grew within me. "Thanks for the ride, I really appreciate it," Alex said. "Yeah, no problem," I replied, forcing a smile. The radio played softly, and I kept an eye on Alex. He frequently looked at the window, glanced at me, and went back to the window. He seemed nervous, and he kept scratching his thighs. In hindsight, those were clear signs of anxiety, but I had no idea why at the time. "Nice car, by the way. What is it, a brand new Civic?" Alex commented. I nodded. "Yeah, it is. I got it a few months ago." Alex whistled. "Must have been quite an investment." His tone and implication made me uncomfortable. People often asked about the cost of my car, but something about the way he said it bothered me. It felt as though he might try to take the car given the chance. I wanted to ask him why he had reached out to me for a ride, but I stayed quiet. Alex's presence unsettled me, and I just wanted to drop him off and go home. "I appreciate you doing this. I didn't want to walk home," Alex said. "It's cool, no worries." "Do you do this often? Give rides to people you barely know?" I shook my head. "Not typically." Alex chuckled. "Probably for the best. You know, there are a lot of unpredictable individuals out there," he said in a sinister, sing-song manner, which made my stomach turn. Without thinking, I replied, "Yeah, you're right. That's why I always keep a personal safety tool under my seat." You never know. Alex didn't react and remained silent for the rest of the ride. As we approached his neighborhood, he pointed to a spot a few houses away. "You can just drop me off here, it's cool," he said hurriedly. I pulled over, and he practically sprinted toward his house, disappearing into the driveway. I drove away, feeling a wave of relief. I didn't think he had realized I was bluffing about the personal safety tool, but my comment might have deterred him from whatever he had planned. A few weeks later, I returned home from work, and my parents were watching the news. Alex's mugshot appeared on the screen. He had been arrested for brutally harming a person in our town after receiving a ride home. The individual, Sarah, left her social media logged in on her laptop, and her mother discovered it when Sarah stopped responding. The police found Sarah's car at Alex's residence, and Sarah's clothes and hands were covered in blood. They discovered controlled substances and a weapon in Sarah's car. I rushed to the bathroom and barely made it before vomiting. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents that Alex was the person I'd given a ride to a few weeks earlier. Instead, I sent an anonymous tip to the police about the occupants of a specific apartment, leading to the arrest of several individuals and the discovery of controlled substances. I can't say what might have happened if I hadn't made that comment about the personal safety tool, but since that night I carry one, and I've never given a ride to someone I don't know personally. When I was younger, my parents would always arrange playdates for me because I wasn't exactly the most social of kids and didn't really have many friends. I mean, back then, I'd feel annoyed with them when they did this. I didn't mind sitting in my room, tipping my plastic crate of Star Wars toys upside down and acting out stories with the most acrobatic lightsaber battles you ever saw. I suppose doing this all the time by myself was slightly weird, and being an only child, I'd be lying if I told you there weren't times I wished somebody else could be there, if only so that the space battles and ground duels could happen simultaneously. My problem was, though, that unless I knew you, I wasn't likely to interact with you, which was quite the dilemma for my young mind. So, in retrospect, it was probably a good thing that I was forced to sit in the bedrooms of a variety of different kids, awkwardly agreeing to whatever they wanted to do while I sweated over their opinion of me. I would have been more grateful for it now if it hadn't been for that one Friday the 13th. My parents wanted to go out for dinner, so I was pawned off on a couple of new friends of theirs for the night, as they had a child who was of a similar age to me. I did my usual tantrums and begging, but with less enthusiasm compared to those first few times. I knew the drill by that point. They weren't going to change their minds. When I got there, he was in the middle of having a bath, so his parents told me I could just go to his room and play with his toys. This ended up with me sitting on a chair, arms folded, and bored in his room because my social awkwardness wouldn't dare let me just touch some kid's toys without asking. I stuck to a strict look, but don't touch policy. The temptation was high when I saw a Stretch Armstrong sitting on his desk. That was the latest fad at the time, and it looked amazing in all those commercials that would play on Cartoon Network. I just wanted to see if it really could stretch for miles. At that point, I heard someone running towards the room. I turned to the door and a kid younger than I am appeared. He said hello and was all excitable and friendly. He told me his big brother was taking a bath and asked if I wanted to see something. This kind of put me at ease being there, to be honest. I loved kids that didn't really care what I had to say and that could just talk and talk. I agreed to see whatever it was he wanted to show me and followed him. He took me through to the kitchen, and there was a door there that he opened, which led to a basement. He walked halfway down the stairs and just stood still, pointing at something that was in the corner of the room. I climbed down to where he was and tried to get a better look at it. I asked him what it was, but he just kept pointing at it and urging me to go over to it. I thought it was just some dumb game he was playing or something, so I went right down the stairs and approached it. As I got closer, all I could see was some sort of crumpled up brown paper bag. It looked like it was quite soggy. There was a nearby rake, so I picked that up and prodded at it before deciding to open it up. When I opened it, I almost threw up right there on the spot. The stench was horrendous, and I can still remember the smell even now. It was just this cat. It was dead, but obviously not for long. I began dry heaving after I noticed its right arm bone had popped out, though. I remember the little brother just laughing at me and then running away. I went straight back to the bedroom afterwards and saw my playdate in there at that point. I couldn't think of anything to say to the kid, and I felt quite nervous, so I blurted out the story of this dead cat his brother had just shown me. I remember telling him this story, and he just gave me this look. It was a look as if I was some sort of crazy person. He was nodding along, but his face was screwing up the more of it I told him. Once I told him the full story, he just sort of froze for a second, looking confused. Then he turned to me and said something I'll never forget until the day I die. He just said, "I don't have a brother." This year marks 6 years since this story happened. On October 13th, 2017, on a Friday night that carried with it all the superstitions of bad luck and misfortune. I, John, the ranger in charge of patrolling the dense forests of Yellowstone National Park, was not a superstitious man, but that night everything seemed different. The rain, which fell incessantly, made the darkness even more impenetrable, obscuring the dense foliage around me. I had heard of the legends associated with that date, but I always treated them with disdain. However, that night, things happened differently. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of rain hitting the leaves and the wind whispering through the trees. A heavy atmosphere hung in the air, which was humid and particularly muggy, and I couldn't help but feel like I was being watched. Some stories circulated about a particularly aggressive wolf pack in the area. Most wolves avoid contact with humans, so I didn't think it was a big deal. That was my mistake. Then I heard a distant sound that made my heart race. A wolf's howl echoing through the forest. The fact that this pack had a reputation for being exceptionally aggressive began to haunt my thoughts, and my steps became more cautious. However, it was just a sound, and I continued my patrol, forcing myself to believe that the superstition of a date couldn't affect my safety. But fate had other plans for me that night. As I advanced through the darkness with my flashlight in hand, I spotted a dark figure slowly emerging from the shadows. It was a wolf, with bright eyes reflecting the dim light of the flashlight. It was larger and more imposing than any wolf I had ever seen, and my courage began to falter. The wolf approached me with slow steps, growling menacingly. A sense of fear ran through my entire body, and I stepped back, keeping my flashlight fixed on the beast. But then, the worst thing that could happen did happen. The flashlight failed, plunging me into total darkness. The world seemed to be in slow motion, and I could barely see the wolf, but I could feel its threatening presence all around me. In the darkness, my ears picked up the growls of the wolf, echoing from all directions. It was getting closer, and I was completely helpless. Desperately, my hands found a broken branch on the ground, my last resort to defend myself against the wolf that seemed determined to reach me. The rain continued to fall, soaking me to the bone as I kept the wolf at bay with the branch. Time seemed to have lost all meaning at that moment. A few minutes dragged on like hours as I faced the beast in the darkness. With each step the wolf took toward me, my heart beat faster, and the feeling that luck was against me became overwhelming. Until suddenly, luck smiled on me for the first time that night. A brutal thunderclap erupted intensely above us. The light illuminated the beast clearly, and I could see it one last time. After the thunder, the beast disappeared into the darkness, and I stood there, trembling and exhausted, unable to believe what had just happened. The rain continued to fall, soaking me and making me shiver with cold. I remained there, breathing deeply, while the darkness and the storm conspired against me, bringing me dangerously close to a terrible situation. After this, I ran back to the car and drove back home. The next morning, the flashlight was working, and to this day, nothing like that has ever happened again.